Hi friends, how are you? I'm Nicole and this is Crimes with Cole. So hello. How are you guys doing today? I hope you all have had an amazing day, have had a wonderful week, and are ready for the weekend. Today we're going to be talking about the fake Barbie. Have you heard of her? She had a wonderful life looking in, but once you actually dug into her life, it was filled with nothing but jealousy and rage. So tonight, we're going to be talking about this shocking story of the OnlyFans model who killed her boyfriend. Abigail White was born in 1998. She grew up in the city of Bristol in the UK, where she lived with her parents. And growing up, Abby saw her dad beat the daylight out of her mother constantly. Eventually, they ended up getting a divorce, but Abby's mom met a new man, married him, and had another child with him. Well, after that baby was born, Abby's stepdad started to sexually and physically abuse her. Social services found out about this, and she was taken from her mother's custody and placed into a foster home. But things didn't get any better there. She was very disruptive in school, like very angry all the time, like just fighting with other kids. She ended up getting expelled from school and had to go to a special school for children with behavioral problems. She had tremendous abandonment and rejection issues and was just very angry and violent at such a young age. When she reached her teenage years, she was taken out of her foster home and placed with her grandmother, but her grandmother couldn't handle her, so she ended up sending her away. Abby ended up with her dad, who now is an alcoholic, so you have this teenage girl who's about 13 years old or so, who has abandonment issues and is angry as hell, living with her father, who's an alcoholic. Like, sounds like a combination, doesn't it? Abby had started to drink and quickly became reliant on it. She then started turning to substances and was prescribed antidepressants. She was constantly in and out of therapy, trying to sort through all of the trauma she had already endured at such a young age. And when she had turned 15, she started her first real romantic relationship with a boy, and that lasted for like 7 months. She said it was a good relationship. She felt loved by him, but after that had ended, Abby's interest turned to a 29-year-old man. She got involved with a 29-year-old man, and she's only 16. Like, we don't know too much about this relationship, but during that time frame, Abby ended up being taken away from her dad and put back into the care system. It basically just bounced around from family to family until she was 18. Her dad was an alcoholic, and she was going a little on the wild side. And sometime within that 2-year time span, her and the 29-year-old man had ended up breaking things off. Now, when she turned 18, she was given housing by the council and for once had stability in her life. But like, that was her upbringing. It was just chaos and abandonment, drugs, alcohol. And needless to say, she had a lot of emotional issues she needed to work through. A lot of trauma she needed to deal with. Now, Abby ended up dating a guy by the name of Brad. Brad is 16 at this time, and the two of them knew each other from school. Brad was known as a great guy, just friendly, kind, very helpful to those who needed it. So when the two decided to make the relationship official, they spent every waking minute together. They could not get enough of one another. Over the next 5 years, Abby and Brad ended up having 3 children. This puts Brad at 21 and Abby at 23 with 3 kids. She's a stay-at-home mom, and Brad laid floors and money was tight. So Abby thought she would find a way to bring in money while staying at home with the kids, because remember, they're all like babies, not babies, but they're not old enough to be in school yet. This is when she decided to create an OnlyFans page. So she created the page and gave herself the name Fake Barbie. She started sharing explicit photos and videos with her subscribers, and it wasn't long before she started bringing in money from it. Her first year, she made £50,000, which from my calculations should be like a little more than $66,000. That's not bad. I don't think that is bad at all for her first year. I think a lot of people forget they have to like market themselves, right? Like you got to put yourself out there. It's not like you just make the page and then you gain all these subscribers out of nowhere. So, I mean, good for her for achieving that goal. Good for her. She was excited to bring in that money, but her income quickly declined that next year. She quit posting as much, and after everything kind of leveled out, she was bringing in about £1,000 a month, which is about $1,300, which was fine. That was enough money for them and the kids to live a good life. It would put food on the table and new clothes on the kids' backs, and Abby was fine with that. Her platform wasn't growing any, and it brought in enough to give them what they needed. But the relationship between Abby and Brad at home was anything but healthy. It was extremely toxic, and the two constantly fought all the time. All the time. They would have a day or two of being like kosher. The rest of the time, they were fighting. And imagine having 2 days a week, every week, 2 days of being happy. And the rest of the time you're just fighting and arguing and ignoring each other, taking jabs at one another. It sounds exhausting. She would demand Brad prove his love to her and tell him to buy her gifts to prove it. She would constantly want praise from him. She wanted him to tell her constantly that he loved her, and anytime she texted him, she wanted an instant reply. And Brad had to comply, because if he didn't, then she turned very violent. Now, imagine being at work and your needy girlfriend, the mother of your children who's home with your 3 babies, text you saying, hello, and you don't respond back instantly because you're laying floors. Now you have to come home to a house that probably has all the pictures torn down, holes in the walls, your kids crying and scared because mommy went crazy again. And Abby's anger issues only got worse as she had gotten older. Her fear of abandonment was never addressed, so she was needy as could be in their relationship. And there was always a problem. She was always angry at someone or about something. She would lash out and attack Brad. Physically attack him. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, poor Brad. But no. Brad was adding his own spice to the pot of toxicity. He was adding in the spice of infidelity, which then enticed Abby to start adding in the same spice. And the two of them just cheated constantly on one another, which then leads to more fighting and arguing, because now the paranoia sets in. So even if you aren't with the other chick and you're attempting to be faithful to me, I will still accuse you of speaking with her, I feel a lot of us may have been there at some point in our lives, and some of us may still be there. But that's how it was for Abby and Brad. They were either cheating on one another or arguing about cheating on one another. There was violence and fighting just all the time. However, the two also seemed to invite others into their relationship. There was a time at a Halloween party where Brad invited a couple back to engage in sexual relations with he and Abby. There was another time when they went to a nightclub and Brad had invited twin sisters back to partake in sexual relations with he and Abby. The twins were like, no, like that's not why we're here. But the one twin had cornered Brad and said, I want to have relations with you and just you. So the two of them had snuck off into the other room and did what they pleased. And there were just a lot of spices being added to this already spicy relationship between Abby and Brad. There were no boundaries. There was no respect. It was just messy. Like, it was very, very messy. There was a time when Brad had cheated on Abby while she was pregnant and ended up getting his mistress pregnant too. And you can imagine how upset Abby was. I mean, I think pissed is an understatement. And she held on to this for a really, really long time. It caused a lot of resentment. Brad's mom didn't like Abby. Like, she could just tell how toxic Abby was and didn't want that for her son. Like I had said earlier, she was just constantly accusing Brad of cheating. She even accused him of sending naked pictures to her own sister. Like, her own sister, which made Abby's parents not like Brad. Like, no one seemed to like anyone. And Abby was just so violent all the time, and Brad always seemed to push his luck way too much. Abby one time got so pissed off at Brad, she had stabbed him in the leg. Yeah, I know. But thankfully, he was okay, and it was just a huge scar that was left. But Abby wasn't just violent towards Brad and her family. She was violent towards complete strangers. She was all the time starting fights when she was out in public, which just sounds exhausting because, like, you know, she's the type that you have to babysit when you're out with her. And she just went from 0 to 100 at the drop of a dime. There was one time that she had actually gotten arrested for attacking some woman in the nightclub and was sentenced to 12 months of community service. And because of that incident, social services got involved because they had kids. Now, even social services would see just how toxic Abby and Brad were together and told them it's completely unhealthy for the kids and you two have to separate. You have to live separately in order to see your kids. So Brad had moved out. He moved in with his mother, and Abby stayed where they had currently been. And you would think this would somehow help, right? Having like some breathing room, but it didn't. It made things significantly worse. Abby became even more controlling than she had been prior. And I know a lot of you are thinking, well, why doesn't he just leave? He's already moved out. I was thinking the same thing too. But he didn't leave because anytime he did, Abby would threaten to kill him. Then she would threaten to take her own life. Then she would threaten to kill anyone that Brad was talking to or sleeping with. Like, she had even threatened to throw a brick at his mother. I mean, she was just like crazy. Yeah, she was crazy. And these messages were like constantly. I mean, they were always like one right after the other, all day, every day. Then she took it upon herself to start Googling disturbing things about how to take one's life. And it should also be noted that she did, in fact, attempt to take her own life. I don't know if it was legit because she actually wanted it, or if she was just crazy enough to prove a point to Brad and take it to those extremes, but she did try. She also had set up a TikTok account around this time as well. And the only thing this account was for was to humiliate Brad. That was the only content she would post on that TikTok. And Brad felt very like defeated over this entire situation. All he could ever talk about to his friends was how much he hated Abby, but how he can't leave her because she'll take her own life. And what about the kids? And he really just felt stuck. So he decided to stay. In March 2022, Abby fell pregnant with her fourth child. She messaged Brad and told him, "I'm pregnant by you and you know it." Now, Brad thought otherwise, as I think anyone would with the amount of cheating that was going on in that relationship. On the 17th of March, Abby started researching a lot of topics that had to deal with miscarriages and stabbing. And that next day, on the 18th of March, she had decided to go and terminate her pregnancy. Now, I don't know if they both decided on it together or if it was just Abby making this decision for herself. I don't know. But regardless, the pregnancy was terminated and Brad was there to support her in every way possible afterwards. He ended up spending the night that night, and that next morning they woke up and the accusations of Brad cheating started up right away. I don't know where she even gets the energy to fight so much. It's so much. But this time, she was more pissed off than normal and stormed into the kitchen and grabbed a kitchen knife, came back, and stabbed Brad. Brad had gone to the hospital and played it off like it was just some small little incident. Nothing to worry about, and covered it all up so Abby wouldn't get into trouble. And the next couple of days, she was sending messages to her friends telling them how she couldn't stand Brad anymore. And everything was just getting the best of her and how she wanted to kill Brad. The only reason she hadn't killed him yet was because she'd end up in prison and she didn't want to do that to her babies. I mean, she was just saying all sorts of ridiculous things. She also would say that the only time Brad ever told her the truth was when she would beat the living daylight out of him or threaten to kill him. When she would pull a knife out on him. That was the only time that he would be honest. So on March 25th, that Friday, Brad had messaged Abby and told her how he wanted to meet up at a park so that, the two of them could talk. And she agreed, but she wanted to bring a friend. So the three of them had met up at the park and are sitting there on the park bench. And Brad tells Abby that it's over for good. He's done. And after a long, awkward pause, Abby just says, "Okay, no hard feelings." Can you imagine how shocked Brad was at that response? Then she goes on to ask if Brad would want to meet up at the pub later that evening. Brad agrees. So later that evening, around 5 p.m. or so, Abby heads to the pub and she noticed Brad hadn't arrived yet. Now she has her 3 children with her and ends up meeting with her 2 friends, Luis and Ryan, who her and Brad would go out on double dates with all the time. But it's now 5:30 and Brad still hasn't arrived. So she's texting him asking, where are you? Why are you always late? Why am I always having to wait on you? You must be busy with another woman. That's why you aren't here. Because you're busy with someone else and you don't care about me. And as she's texting all of these angry texts to him, she's just, knocking the drinks back. She is well past her limit and just pissed off to no limit. So finally at 7 p.m., Brad shows up. She's drunk. Her poor 3 kids are still there watching all of this. So instantly, when she sees him, she demands that he tells her where he's been. Why are you so late? You were with another girl. How dare you? I think we all can imagine how Abby's being right now. Brad turns to his buddy Ryan and says, "Hey, can you come to the bathroom with me?" So Ryan goes back to the bathroom with Brad. And he's just telling Ryan how he's scared for Abby's life. He just doesn't know what to do. So after Brad, got himself composed and back together, he opens the bathroom door and Abby is standing there waiting for him in the doorway. She starts flipping out again, screaming in his face. What were you talking about? You were talking about me, weren't you? Were you talking about the other chick that you were with? Is that why you were late? Because you were with someone else? Were you in there talking to him about her? She throws her drink on him and smacks him across the face and then starts punching him repeatedly. And as a man, I mean, what can you do? Nothing. So he just took it. But thankfully, Ryan interfered and told her stop. Like, stop bullying and abusing Brad. And told Brad that if he didn't want to go home with Abby, he could come back to his place and stay. And that just pissed Abby off. I'm sure you can imagine. Abby walked up to Ryan, stared him dead in the eyes, and spit in his face. I would have punched her in the mouth. Like, oh my God. I don't care if she was a woman or not. Like, if I was Ryan, I would have punched her in the mouth. That is disgusting. Like, oh God, that's nasty. That's absolutely one of the most disrespectful things to do to somebody. So Ryan decided he's done. So he leaves, he and Louise leave, and Brad just walks up to the bar and orders himself a drink. Now Abby's all worked up at this point, and she tells Brad she wants to go. She wants to go home. Brad said, no, I just got my drink. I'm not wasting it. Abby just takes her arm and swipes it across the top of the bar, knocking the drink to the ground, shattering the glass everywhere, and gives Brad this like creepy, disturbing smirk and says to him, well, it looks like you don't have a drink now. Now, some random woman in her 30s asks, is everything all right? Is everyone good? Which Abby turns and says to her, who the fuck are you? Naturally, the man that was with this random woman steps in and is like, hey, like, you don't need to be talking to her like that. Like, she's just asking if everything's okay. Like, is everyone good? Should we guess what Abby's reaction was? Should we? She threw her drink in his face, smacked him, and then spit on him. Like, why no one has laid her out at this point? Because Lord. Ooh. So this man shoves Abby, and Abby ends up falling backwards and landing on the floor. Not that any of us are feeling bad for her at this point, but then she starts crying and playing the victim role rather well, actually. Brad jumps up and says, no, don't hit Abby. Once again, protecting her for whatever reason. And then Abby has the audacity to call the police and report this man shoving her. So as she's on the phone reporting this man, she tells them his description, right? What he looks like and how he had shoved her, and then just sits the phone down as they ask her for her name and location. After she sits the phone down, she just starts going off on Brad. How dare you let another man put his hands on me and shove me? I can't believe you would even allow that. So at 7:50, and it's crazy to think that all of this has happened within the hour, but at 7:50, Brad, Abby, and the 3 kids all leave the pub and head back to the house. They arrive home a little before 8. As soon as she entered through the doorway, she just starts verbally attacking Brad, getting in his face. How dare you let that man shove me? You're so worthless. What are you good for? In front of their children, mind you. These poor babies. Oh, God bless them. Abby yells at the kids to get upstairs and get ready for bed. Brad's over here trying to remain calm and tells Abby to calm down. Abby shoves Brad, storms off into the kitchen, grabs a knife, comes back over to Brad, and without hesitation stabs him in the chest. And the look on his face, he was in complete shock. Blood is just pouring out of his chest, running down his shirt, and dripping all over the floor. Abby's panicking and starts to help Brad take off his shirt, and then turns around and glances back at the staircase to find her 3-year-old son standing there quietly watching everything that had just happened. Brad is now lying on the floor, bleeding out. Abby doesn't know what to do, so she starts cleaning up the mess. She grabs a scrub brush and some rags and starts cleaning up the mess that is all around Brad. Now, Abby supposedly had called the police shortly thereafter, and I say supposedly because according to her, she couldn't get through to the police. I've never heard of that happening before, but apparently she couldn't. Abby starts screaming in a panic, and this is when their neighbor, Laura, comes over and knocks on the door to see if everything's okay. Abby answers the door in her little pink mini dress that she had on, without a speck of blood on it, mind you, and leads Laura over to where Brad is lying. And according to Laura, Abby was very concerned about Brad. She kept repeating, we love you, Brad. We love you. Hang on. You're going to be okay. Was she really concerned? I don't know. Maybe not. Laura goes over to Brad and she calls for help and started CPR. She starts putting pressure on Brad's wound. Everything that Abby should have done right after she decided to stab him fatally in the chest. Abby then tells Laura that Brad stabbed himself. She said the two of them were arguing, and Brad got so angry that he picked up the knife and did this to himself. Brad was rushed to the hospital and taken into surgery immediately, but unfortunately, Brad didn't make it. The knife had gone through his ribs and punctured his heart. He passed away just 5 hours after Abby had attacked him. They arrested Abby immediately, but she continued to tell the story that Brad had done this to himself. At first, she told the police that she and Brad had gotten into a huge argument and Brad had stabbed himself, which that just didn't make sense. Then she changed the story to they were arguing, she grabbed the knife, but Brad wrestled the knife out of her hand and then stabbed himself. Again, that just didn't make sense either. So she changed the story again and said that they were arguing and she got the knife and Brad grabbed her hand while she's holding the knife and stabbed himself while she was holding the knife, which really didn't make sense. So they asked the little boy who was standing on the stairs, and he told them, "Mommy stabbed Daddy." So they officially charged Abby with the murder of Brad, and she awaited her trial, which was set for October 2022. Now, during this time, she finally admits to stabbing Brad. However, it was all a complete accident. She didn't mean to harm him, let alone kill him. They had gotten into an argument, and it was just all a huge accident. She wanted the lesser charge of manslaughter is what she had wanted. But the prosecution said, no, you stabbed him in the chest, right in the area where his heart was. That is no accident. You don't accidentally stab somebody in the chest near their heart. You stab them there because you want to cause damage. Then they brought up all of her violent behavior in the past. The fact that she was a ticking time bomb and had stabbed poor Brad twice prior to taking his life. All the times she had told her friends how she wanted to kill him, which could have been just venting, but in her case, she said it too much and she had too many actions to support those statements. Abby was found guilty of the murder of Brad and sentenced to 18 years in prison. And while she has been in prison, she has demanded that she be allowed to have sexual relations with whichever men she wants. She believes she is entitled to that. I know. But that is all I have for today. You will have to let me know what you think. And until next time, please remember to be safe and I will see you then. Bye.